Good.
Good to go.
Live stream. You're like 2 seconds.
Yeah, everybody in the Snoop group's refreshing right now just to find this thing.
There we go.
Refresh.
It's live.
I know some people that are panicking right now.
All right, Justin, it's your turn.
My turn I get to do the honors. And what a better time to get to do the honors. You know, a few weeks ago when, you know, Jacob and Ben and I, we talked about doing the supplement industry roundtable. We didn't know how it was going to play out. We just said, hey, we know some cool people. We got some cool shit to talk about, so let's go do it. 2 weeks ago, we had the guys from Glaxon, Michael and Sam, but we were missing Joey Savage, the formulator for Glaxon. But here, now we have him this week with us all by himself. We have him all to ourselves, and we're excited about it. So thanks to Jacob and Ben, of course, for being here with me as usual, and Joey for joining us which will be a good time.
Thank y'all for having me as usual. Well, actually, this is my first time on here. This is a little bit different. There's 3 of y'all at one time.
Yep.
Have you done lives with Justin yet? I know we've done one previously.
I've done a supplement engineer podcast with Justin.
Yeah, we did a podcast together.
So we'll have to do Smirk V2 with the next one. So just so everyone knows, I don't think we publicly posted this yet. Like, there is no V2 happening today. We're going to exhaust Joey's knowledge of whatever we can get for 2 hours, and we'll switch to that one soon.
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier. What we're going to do is this will be sort of part 1, because we had hoped to get the next version of the product we took last time, but didn't happen. So we're like, well, shit, we'll just do 2. So this will be maybe we can concentrate on some things, and then next time we'll take the product first, and we'll have a little bit of extra fun with that one.
Well, so this channel hasn't had Joey on it himself. So Joey, I guess we could start off talking a little bit, just for people that are watching, a little bit of your background. I know it's pretty expansive.
Just a little bit of
give us a synopsis.
Just can you condense all this crazy shit into one paragraph?
So my one paragraph is, I've always been into supplements, and even as like a kid in high school, that's when I started working like actual retail and selling supplements and stuff at GNC. Then I went to college and I was studying genetics and biochemistry at Texas A&M, and I worked at a local nutrition store there while I apprenticed with the previous formulator of Cellucor, and eventually found my way to getting into that company while I was still a college student, which was really cool. And I went from a sales position and ended up shifting into formulations because of that multi-year, apprenticeship that I'd had previously. So I learned from another formulator, and they were pretty much the one person who like facilitated my interest in this whole thing to actually like make it into something. So, I worked for Cellucor for about 7 years, and I left after that, started my own company called Limited Labs. And then after that, I decided that I was going to come over here to Zero Day, which makes Glaxon, and I was going to work with Michael and the team here on building their own brand, and as far as coming out with multiple SKUs and everything. So it's kind of neat because they're a manufacturer, but they hadn't had any in-house brands prior, which was kind of interesting and a great opportunity. So I was like, let's make some in-house brands and really get something going. And we launched in November.
That's crazy.
I keep having to remind myself and everyone else, like, we're a baby in this. Like, I mean, the people behind it are not, but the brand itself it's a baby. It's like what, 7, maybe 8 months old. And we're going through a phase right now where we're growing faster than I've ever had to grow my whole life. As far as being able to like scale up and get to that next level. And it probably took like 2 to 3 years whenever I was with Cellucor before we were starting to hit these bigger strides. But it's happening really quickly over here on this side.
So I got a question right away. I want to back up because, the C4 has become kind of a punchline in some circles of the supplement industry. But what was the C4 formula back then when you were working for Cellucor?
Well, there was even like a version that didn't even make it to market that was like a little bit more extra. It was intentionally made at the time because we didn't have any kind of like an actual pre-workout in our lineup, and Jack 3D at the time was like just killing it in sales. So it was developed, it was basically saying, we need to take out Jack 3D, and how are we going to do that? And I looked at like some of the mechanisms and stuff in the formula, and they had arginine AKG with just a touch of creatine, and they had DMAA and caffeine. And I was like, okay, I can check these boxes, but there's a couple little smaller things that I want to do in order to make this a little bit more differentiated than actual Jack 3D. So, you know, we had creatine nitrate. We were one of the first companies to have creatine nitrate, I would say, like after Twin Lab in the 90s, where we were finally using stuff that, you know, was the INOS dependent and the NOS independent ways of making nitric oxide in the same product. So we had that going for us. And then, you know, anything with 1,3 in it back then was going to do really well. But that lasted maybe 18 months tops before we had to make a change on that one and swap the 1,3 out for synephrine. And, you know, there's little things in these formulas like the little B vitamin complexes and stuff that I throw in there to make it, you know, just a little bit more efficacious and kind of round out some of the jagged edges of some of those stimulants, to make it just a friendlier kind of feel than you would get, you know, with anything otherwise. And it tasted really good, and it was shiny, and it was yellow, and people just fell in love really quickly. And you know, the beginning with it being like a 1,3 product, that got its respect pretty quickly. And as soon as, you know, C4 in its original form like swept through the masses, like people were like, my God, this is great. And, you know, since then it was able to ride off of that initial success in that name, while at the same time diversifying into all these different other patterns that they have now. So you've got the ripped and the mass and the neuro and all the sports and all the C4 smart energy. And then there's like 2 different kinds in a can, whether you want regular, if you want ultimate, or if you even want dynasty. And I thought that was kind of interesting that they actually even made Dynasty marking like the 10-year anniversary of C4, which a lot changed in that amount of time. And it's really interesting because, you know, you think about a pre-workout product and they don't usually last very long, or at least not in their original form. And, you know, as far as having a pre-workout that's lasted 10 years, I think that's pretty commendable. I mean, even NO Explode, which I would say is like the second most major pre-workout of all time, after there was another one, the orange one that had ephedrine in it. That was the first pre-workout of that back in the late 90s.
Ultimate Orange,
Ultimate
baby.
Orange.
Yeah.
That was your first pre-workout. Then NO Explode came along, and then C4 after that. And those are your more, I guess you could say, dynastic pre-workouts.
Yeah, I don't think most people, that's a fun fact for most people. I don't think that most people would know that at one point C4 had DMAA in it. That was kind of what I was getting at there. It's like, you know, it's just stuff happens as you grow as a company and things change. But I tell you what, if you made a pre-workout right now with DMAA and creatine nitrate in it, it would sell pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So if we want to get on that.
I don't know if I want to touch that one yet. I don't know. I got in at the tail end of, I was selling Jack 3D and GNC, but I was on the tail end of it for sure. I was there for the heyday of USP Labs. I definitely sold a bunch of stuff that Joey made. I remember, like, I think Joey and I, you talked about the M5 cans that were like separate dosings.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what exactly each one was, but DMAA was kind of getting phased out as I was coming into the industry, which I don't really have a problem with. But
I don't have a problem with it either. Like there's plenty of other like stimulants that have been banned that I think, you know, actually have more of a substantiated case for still being dietary ingredients. But this is the way that it works, you know, and until it's etched in stone into law, you know, as far as whether it's illegal or not, you know, then there's a lot of question. And that's where the gray area stuff comes in. And the gray area is still just as abundant now as it ever has been. You know, there's several different compounds that are not quite dietary ingredients, or they've been investigated overseas for potential medical use, and it's just kind of interesting. And then they just slowly find their way, trickling their way into supplements. And even Phenibut's like that. Phenibut's still used pretty often. You know, might have taken some earlier, you know, but I've got a personal stash, so you know, that's just an individual thing.
I stocked up before they gave me the final warning, so
I've never used Phenibut ever.
Really?
Yeah, I heard a really, really bad story from.
It can get bad.
They scared you straight.
Yeah, it can.
Yeah,
And King got scared straight.
I don't know if you guys know about Sups, the store chain up in Wisconsin, but one of their area managers, like, he has a nightmare story with Fenfoot. And he told it to me like just hard enough that I never really want to touch it, but I kind of do at the same time. You know, if it was accessible, like if I had it, I would take it, but I don't feel like looking for it, I guess.
I got you, buddy.
I got you.
But Joey, yeah, I don't know. You said before on one of your questions, it was like, what's one ingredient that you could bring back? I'm pretty sure you said ephedra, right?
Yeah.
My wall. Ooh.
Yeah. So that's like, out of all the gray area, like even if it isn't a dietary supplement, if you could make it Tashea, it'd still be ephedra.
Well, I think that one was really taken out of context as far as people that were taking too much, people that were doing ridiculous amounts of exercise and sweating profusely. Like, even with caffeine, you have to be careful because, you know, a hammer can either kill someone or it can drive a nail. It can do what it's supposed to do, or it can become like some sort of a deadly weapon. But, you know, I think that one with a little bit more dosage regulation and a little bit more scrutiny, I think it should still be able to exist as long as we can come up with some sort of a consensus with an agreed upon dose range that's not exceeded in the industry. I think if we have more legislation that goes in that kind of direction, where, you know, if we do recognize that something is good in some doses, but it's not good in other doses, that we can somehow try to put some sort of a cap on that so we can actually, you know, stop the adverse events kind of before they even happen, and actually, you know, have some ingredients that are still really profound.
Mm-hmm.
Novel concept for sure. So I have a question. So now, because you worked for Cellucor and then they started to grow into this large company, what's it like now compared to being, you know, at Cellucor? Now you sort of have like your little playground around you at Glaxon. Like, what's that sort of the difference there? Like, how your experience was at Cellucor and then now the way you're sitting now.
I think it went from more of a theoretical kind of place, because one of the things that is a major difference maker between that experience in my life and this one is the fact that I'm sitting in a manufacturing facility. You know, that alone takes a lot of that theoretical stuff that, you know, you can play with as a brand. You can have ingredients brought in, but it's not really quick and efficient to make samples or anything like that, or to try new flavors or any of those things. But when you're actually in an actual manufacturing facility, it's rapid fire. You can make anything you want to on the fly. So like that playground analogy, I mean, that is kind of appropriate. But the things that you learn when you actually are able to, you know, be upon the playground and actually play with the things, there's huge value in that I would have never gotten not having my hands on or hands in these kinds of things. So I would say that's probably the major difference. The other major difference is when you go from working for a company that's just a brand to working for a manufacturer that is a brand, but also produces other brands. It's a really interesting thing that you kind of get to look at the bird's eye view of like all the quality management system stuff that's in place, the different ingredients that you have to get tested, and the frequency of like how you actually have to do that. And you know, to be able to see if something doesn't test in spec, and then you've got to make some pivots in order to make this work, like the kind of stuff that you really are challenged to in order to like obey the law properly. And you know, it's okay if you screw up, but if you do screw up, you have to make an adjustment to account for that. And you know, that's a ton of stuff I would have never learned just working for a brand itself.
That was actually one question I was going to ask, is how much, I know you formulate, but how much of your time is spent in QC, QA, and how much of it's spent in creating new SKUs?
I would say that I would probably spend about 10 to 15% of my time doing QA, QC. And I think that's kind of nice because we outsource a lot of it. So I'm not testing literally in-house. All the testing that we do is third-party tested.
Right.
So, you know, all that stuff is done by Eurofins, which, you know, they're a pretty darn good lab if you do some Googling. There's not too many that really compete with them, or at least not on quite the scale that they do. The other reason why, you know, we kind of chose them is because that they're able to do all the things that I'm going to want to do that not just any testing facility is going to be able to do. And the things that they can't do, I will send them instructions, and they usually comply. Like if one example is there's a method for a given compound that they didn't have, and I was like, okay, I've got some stuff that can kind of beat around the bush about a method, and then they tried it, validated it, and all of a sudden it worked. So that's kind of cool. It's a nice notch in my belt where I'm talking to one of the most major labs in the United States, if not the world, and being like, okay, well, let's make a method so I can have my stuff tested with you guys. I don't have to go test it somewhere else. I think that's kind of neat.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a lot of people would be, I know you kind of like elaborated on that, but that maybe, can you go into that like a little bit more? Like, how is that relationship? So you have your stuff, but now so how's that working relationship with another lab with I just think like people would be surprised how many like layers there are to this entire process, and things like that I think are really pretty fascinating.
So that is as far as like the layer that exists between the third-party testing lab and the actual company?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a couple of different ways that this has to go. One, if you're bringing in like new ingredients, you have to validate the supplier, which that can take like a couple of weeks if you're lucky on the short end of it. But otherwise, if say you bring in a raw material that's brand new to your company, you've got to do testing on that and find out what it's going to be like as far as its possible degradation over time, or just anything you need to do to get it into the system, which is a whole process in itself as far as getting into the QMS, having that stuff automatically plug and chug into formulas, and actually seeing those gears kind of start to come together. And then there's always that weird kind of downtime in between, like when you get your samples, when you send them off for testing and you're doing the validation process, and you just got your fingers crossed and you're praying that it all works out all right, and you're not talking to a supplier who's just a complete dud. And it's really fun when you pass these different milestones. You're like, you get all these yes answers, and when you get a no answer, it's kind of a bummer. But you've got to keep moving, especially if you want to play with stuff that's really interesting. And a lot of these things, especially when I'm looking at new ingredients for like new formulas that are coming down the road, like the real fun stuff I want to play with, finding out like if they've got methods and standards for that kind of stuff is really kind of eye-opening, because they don't have methods and standards for everything. Or even talking to some of the suppliers, and to those suppliers, and being like, hey, when you guys got this analyzed, what was your method, and verifying that with them, and then saying, well, does Eurofins test for this that you know of? And they're like, I don't know, no one's ever told me. And then you're like, well, then where are they getting it tested? I hope they're getting it tested, because if they're not getting it tested and we don't have an agreed upon consensus, kind of a method here on this particular material, then it's kind of telling as far as whether or not those other companies are doing testing or not.
Yeah, because I think the reason, Ben and I have talked about this, we try to get people to, and I think people want to care about third-party testing, but they're just really not. It's hard because when we just go, well, we want it third-party tested, and people are like, yeah, that sounds cool, but like, what does that mean? And or why is it so important? And then you can see like when someone sort of walks you through, you're like, okay, this is really important. Like, when Ben working at NutraBio, and you go through the manufacturing facility and you see where they do the testing, and then when it moves from this station, how important it is to be tested to go to this station. You're like, well, yes, how could you do it any other way and it be legitimate? Because if you're not doing that, then what do we do? How do we even know it? And then, because if people could see that, if consumers could see that aspect of it, they would look at this industry completely different. But you just don't know unless you actually get a view behind the curtain, or if someone can explain it. So that's why I appreciate the explanation.
Well, and then there's like that, like I was just talking about the raw material, where I was talking to the supplier, and like they told me that nobody had gotten it tested yet, or no one told them how they'd gotten it tested. It's kind of fun in this little GMP environment where you see little opportunities like that, where you're like, holy shit, am I being a pioneer right here? Like, okay. Yeah. There's that end of it, and then there's the stuff where you don't know you're being a pioneer. There's stuff where you are being a pioneer, and then there's also like weird little chemistry tricks that you can also kind of think of, where you might be bending the rules a little bit, but you're not breaking them, to where even through chemical analysis and everything ends up right on paper, even though you might have made like some sort of adjustment, like, instead of using like potassium citrate, you use like tripotassium citrate, and that, actually decreases the dose of actual, potassium citrate you might have used previously, because now all of a sudden you have like 3 potassium ions to every citrate. So, there's little wiggle rooms and stuff like that where you find out, yes, this can still test out exactly like it should, but it's slightly different than, what we were thinking, and that's where I have fun, that, and then just finding new things in general.
Yeah. No, I need to speak from from my perspective too, as far as like consumers not understanding the value of third-party testing. I can say that all day long, and literally that's the number one thing that gets people to glaze their eyes over. Is, oh yeah, don't worry, like, these guys are third-party tested. I have the the COA to back up the ingredient or whatever. I wish there was a way to better, I guess, inform consumers. But then again, I guess that's my job anyway. But yeah.
I had a pretty large takedown. I don't know if you guys know Nick Trigili. He's a pretty famous bodybuilder that just turned into a distributor of SARMs. And he was telling everyone that he had third-party analysis for all of it. And
really?
So naturally, I asked him what lab in America is testing his SARMs for him, to which he sent me a Chinese COA. He's like, it's a third party. They had it done in China. And I'm like, I can't even take this conversation any further. So yeah, it's funny. Like, people are starting to value like the concept of third party testing, but people don't ask the questions yet.
Well, and I think that and a topic we talk about all the time, and actually we talk to Sam and Mike about this quite a bit, is we accept the fact that there is people within the industry right now that are never going to care about that stuff. But at the same time, if we ever really hope to reach more people, the big stigma, and I don't even want to say stigma because it's just kind of true, is people are just scared of what this stuff actually is, and they probably should be in a lot of ways. But it's like, so if you're ever going to get more people into this space, this is the kind of stuff we have to do. But it's like, how do you go about that? You can say third-party testing all night long, but unless you walk somebody, because there's an inherent trust factor too. Anytime you go to, retail or whatever, that, oh, what I'm about to buy, this has obviously been tested and it's safe and stuff, and you're like, no, like, I can't explain to you enough that this is not true. And I think people just don't know that, though. So if we can hope to bridge that gap that we talk about a lot, this is like important conversation.
Right. And I think people don't understand. I think like people in our industry, we understand the value of third-party testing and, legitimate research behind products and whatnot. But your average person just doesn't get that. They assume, okay, well, he's educating me about this ingredient. But what they don't realize is that this ingredient may or may not be standardized to what they say it is. And that's something. Yeah, exactly. I mean, no, you're exactly right. So, and that's the smoke and mirrors that our industry has traditionally put forward. So I get that.
How do we like kind of translate this to customers though? Like, even if, I mean, there's even like literature at the bottom of like a lot of these test results say you can't even publicize or share this information, or I don't know, maybe you can get crafty with Photoshop or something and kind of reproduce the results or something. And, does that mean much to the customer, to see that kind of thing? And I think Amazon did a good job with some of their herbals where they had like a QR code where you could kind of see that kind of stuff. But I tend to wonder, what percentage of those people are actually scanning the code.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's letting the customer know that this even goes on, like, because like I said, there's that inherent trust factor, like you said, Justin, or Ben, that people are just accepting that it is what it is. So how do we let them know that, hey, this is important and this does go on? I think that would be the first step. And I hate
really only care when there's like a reason to, like when
right
caught amino spiking, like then people cared about third-party testing, right? I think people only care when they realize there's an issue. So like when
I was right in the middle of that one.
Yeah. When our buddy Sam goes and publishes like pre-workout testing that shows in the proprietary blend there's like over a gram of caffeine or something like that, then people care about testing. But People, I don't think as a default really wonder if it even is, because it's funny when I present the idea of third-party testing, a lot of people will be like, wow, that's incredible, that should be required by law. And there's like this real awkward pause that
right, that should be a thing.
That should be a thing. It's almost like
I
it
swear,
is. So.
it sounds like it should be a thing. Like it might actually already be a thing.
It could be a thing. Well, and I think, I don't know, and not that this is, maybe it's a small step, but I think that that's one reason too why Ben and I, we talk about you guys a lot too. And Ben and I had these conversations early before we really got to know you guys too, where when a brand can kind of come in and you can bring, you're using sort of like, you know, the same ish ingredients in different ways. And obviously you guys are bringing some kind of new cool stuff to the table too. But when people start to use products that they're used to using, you know, similar kind of things, and then all of a sudden they're having like different experiences and they're going, man, this is different than that kind of what I expected. And then that's when I think like Ben and I are like, yeah, because we want to know why, like it, or not necessarily like why for sure, but it could be, you know, because okay, and this is why they do what they do, and why, like, you know, we talk about NutraBio in the past all the time. It's like, why does NutraBio's products like deliver every time, you know, you kind of take them, whether they're your favorite or not, I don't know, but it's like people go, oh, you know, I'll take this one time, and then another time and it's totally different. And it's like, well, and then so when we see things like you guys where people are kind of taken aback a little bit by the effectiveness of the products, we're like, hey, let's drive this conversation, let's keep talking about this. Like, let's not just chalk it up to like, this is luck or, you know, something, because right away, Ben knows this too. How many people were like, oh, because their products wouldn't test out because they're spiking their shit. And Ben and I are like, well,
the amount of people that said that was,
yeah.
I got like almost on a daily basis. Specimen, it must be spiked. It's way too strong.
Yep. And we're like, actually, if you like, we should talk about this more, because that's a really important point. People assume that it was being spiked higher than it was, when in reality it's like, well, no, they're just doing what they're supposed to do. Not saying everyone else isn't, but it's like, and this is what they do, this is their process. So if we can show people that, you know, it's kind of like a nudge in the right direction anyway, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I can tell you from the testing, the only thing that did not match what was on the label when we tested specimen for the last batch was riboflavin. It's a little too high. That was it.
That's good.
That was the only out of spec thing about it, was having too high of riboflavin. I looked at this, it's like, there's no way this riboflavin. It doesn't matter. It's just a water soluble vitamin. So like, to have that something so nominal, you know, to be out of spec was a huge relief. I mean, it was just like, yes, finally.
One of the things that I like about Glaxon is you guys talk about that it is a challenge in some ways to get that. Like, it's like no one ever talks about like, hey, this batch didn't come out right. Like every other company acts like every single thing they ever do is perfect. Like you guys have different bottles right now because of the lack of delivery in America. Like I like the transparency a lot.
Well, I mean, everyone's got problems, man. Everybody's got problems and different kinds of problems. And you know, the world's a weird place these days. And, you know, because of all these strange events going on, you know, there's starting to be some pretty significant hiccups in supply chain. And, you know, that's not just ingredients. It's like plastics and all kinds of other stuff and desiccants and vented seals and all the different things that go into making a product that you don't think about, you know. And it makes it definitely has me, you know, kind of thinking of more of like a prospective kind of direction. Like, you know, what are we learning from all of this? What are we learning from all these different world events that are going on? And it makes me think that, you know, in a way, we should kind of start thinking a little bit more locally as far as not just the manufacturing of these finished products, but the plastics and possibly even the plants themselves. And, you know, to try to think of, you know, our country in more of like a self-sustainable kind of way going forward.
Yeah, kind of almost like we talk about, like, just what happens when your Wi-Fi goes out for an hour and you realize how reliant you are on that. Well, it's kind of like we talked about this before too, is you see how reliant we are on these things that you sort of take for granted, and then all of a sudden it trickles back down and you're like, wow, maybe we should come up with a backup plan at least.
Well, I mean, yeah, we're so interconnected on everything. Like, look at us. We've got a guy in New Jersey, a guy in Delaware, a guy in South Carolina, and then me over here in Texas. And this is just a normal day for us. This is a normal day. 10, 20 years ago, this would have been completely unheard of. And, you know, this, and I don't like the term new normal at all. You know, but I think that, you know, everyone in their own way should strive to create their own normal. And I even had like a post on my story about this today. And, you know, I don't buy everything that you're being fed by the media or social media, or even, you know, that friend of yours who's just a little bit, you know, of an asshole who's trying to push their own agenda. You know, I believe that we as people are capable of making up our own minds. We know what's right, we know what's wrong. And, you know, I think that more of that is going to become apparent in the coming months, where you need to like focus on your world, what is in your control, and forget about everything else that's not in your control. And if you want to make some sort of a positive impact, start with yourself, then act locally, and then hopefully you can spread out. And that's the direction we need to be thinking moving forward.
Yep.
I like it.
Well,
At NutriBio, we tried to make sure as many ingredients and tools as we could were from America, in terms of ingredients and deskins, bottles, stuff like that. But one of the things that was really difficult, which I think might be interesting to talk since you're in a manufacturing plant, is the actual like mixers and encapsulators and stuff like that. You cannot find that manufactured in America almost ever, which is really tough.
We got our sample pack machine right here in Houston.
That's awesome.
I thought that was really great. And it's really great because those guys are essentially, you know, across town. And if we have like a break or if a part goes wrong or something, they're here same day and they fix it. And you're not going to get that kind of service from some other country.
No. I've toured the manufacturing areas and supply side, and I don't think they're going to be flying over to help out.
No.
Well, I think that I wanted to, one point you just made about thinking more internally. I think that, you know, when sort of everything started to go to shit and people started to panic and everyone was just sort of watching the news, I think it was one thing that a few of us have talked about, and I know you guys are kind of hit on the same thing. You're like, okay, instead of looking outwards and panicking, like companies that managed to continue to do well, you guys kept dropping products, you kept, you know, pushing, you're doing more things, you're buying more equipment, you're buying more things, because you sort of took that opportunity to like insulate a little bit and just focus on what you were doing. And then you sort of come out stronger. We kept like hammering on that, like as we were going through, that's what we were trying to do too. It's like, okay, can't worry about anything else. What can we control, you know, right in front of us? And that's like what we sort of saw you guys do. You kept the pace going. You didn't stop. You didn't slow down. When we saw a lot of brands come to a grinding halt, make really big moves, whether they work out or not, we'll see, but really interesting moves. But you guys just kept in, because going back to like what you said earlier, you guys just started, so you have this plan in place for that first year, and then all of a sudden, you know, 6 months into it, 8 months into it, I mean, everything gets throw all the paper up in the air, right? But it's like you guys have been able to keep going. So I think that that's sort of a testament to what that attitude you were just talking about.
I agree. And I think if you focus on your own life and your own little world inside the really big world, then, you know, if you just take care of that kind of stuff, the rest of it will handle itself.
Yeah.
And
I mean, this podcast is a pretty big example of that. I've been talking about making content for a while, and then we just got so bored at home. We're like, you guys want to start this thing online? So you know, I think there were a lot of memes going around about like using this time to develop skills or entrepreneurial ideas or anything like that. If you don't come out of this, like you're a bad word.
Well, you know, there was also a separate agenda push, like don't use this time to try and attempt to move forward. I don't know if y'all saw that. Like you saw that article passed around from the New York Times. I was like,
there's always like back to every like there's pushback on, and no matter how pure and wonderful the idea is. Like
literally, there was an article put out by, I think it was a large production publication, saying, don't follow the people saying be productive during this time. And I'm like,
wait, I didn't read that.
Like I was so blown away. Like I read the article. I'm like, who is saying this shit? Like, but yeah.
Well, like, what else are you supposed to do? You know, you've got to do something to be productive and keep yourself from going completely stir crazy while you're stuck in your house. One thing that I thought was like fantastic was all these different home gyms.
Yeah.
And it made me do a lot of thinking, like, you know, where's the future gyms going to be with all these people that are buying home gyms and doing their own thing? And a lot of these people are going to find out that they like working out at home more.
Mhm.
Well, you'd be amazed. I mean, since the gyms opened back up in South Carolina, we saw a huge, like, the value of a plate, of a 45-pound plate.
Yeah.
Like we could use that as the gold standard for money here in America, like a month ago. And now, since gyms opened up 2 weeks ago, go to Facebook Marketplace,
Mhm.
and it's crazy. I mean, you could literally source an entire gym for, probably under 20 grand at this point.
I'm planning on it.
I mean, it's crazy because I thought people would have stopped going to the gyms as much equipment that was bought up, but it's an interesting social experiment to watch happen. So
that's a good way to put it. I think that's sort of the approach I took. I was like, well, I'm just gonna, like, I don't read, me. I'm just like, whatever. I'm just gonna do my thing. But so we're focusing. I would just kind of like look every now and then, just as like a social experiment to kind of see what's going on. You sort of like open the curtain. You're like, oh man, it's bad out there, and just go back to what we're doing because it's like, holy shit, these people are crazy.
I think a lot of people think that they really enjoy training, but they don't enjoy training as much as they think they do. I think a lot of people spent like $1,000 on a home gym and realized, like, I think I like the social aspect of the gym more than I do the actual training.
Yeah.
So,
well, and one thing I've learned is that for some people, not unfortunate, but for some people, that is their only social outlet. I mean, they don't seem to connect with a lot of people outside of their work, or even in their work, they might not have access to that. So there's a big psychological component that goes into being at a gym too. So I get it.
I'm training in an empty gym right now, and it's just not the same.
Yeah. I was gonna ask Joey, do you guys, like, your the Glaxon team seems pretty tight knit. Do you guys train together and stuff too?
We don't train together. We actually train I think we train all at different gyms. Nice. Goes to a gym. Michael goes to a gym. TK goes to a gym over by his house, and I go to a different gym that's closer to my house. But we're thinking about playing with some things and making some content in the future with innovative training modalities, if you will. And I'm not talking like high intensity interval training or CrossFit or anything that's outside the norm, but like finding different interesting kind of new ways to just play with the physiology in ways we haven't seen. I think Ben knows what I'm talking about, but we're going to talk about some different new and interesting kind of tricks that you can do in addition to taking supplements that can also enhance muscle growth. And I think there's a lot to be discovered there.
Because no doubt.
We've been doing it, this way for a certain amount of time. And I think like the concept of looking at a muscle as like an electrical kind of an engine is something that we're definitely going to be exploring in the future.
That's awesome.
So I've seen you guys using what is it called? The Newbie.
Mm-hmm.
I have a few friends that have used those, and they say it's insane. But one of the things that I've kind of thought is kind of funny is, like, we've kind of trained the same since the 60s. Like, training has not really changed. Like, the volume and frequency and stuff has kind of come in cyclical revolutions, but I don't really see much different overall. So I think with our current technology, we could figure out something better. And I think the Newbie is part of it.
I agree. And then once I saw that piece of technology, there's so many different things I want to do. Like, could you imagine that kind of stuff, like actually mounted into some sort of a activewear or something?
Yeah.
To where, the Newbie is part of your shorts, your slider shorts you put on before you go work out on squat day. Or maybe there's like some other attachments into it that go into your socks that plug into the shorts. There's so many different ways you can take that.
How do you spell that for all the people watching that want to Google that right
now? I have no idea. I think it's Neubie.
Yeah, that sounds right. Neubie.
We'll do a shameless plug. The Newbie is a company they started out of Austin, and what it is it's kind of like a TENS machine. And if you've ever seen a TENS machine before, they've got these adhesive electrodes that have wires running from them, and you slap it on whatever muscle it is that you want to stimulate, and it will flex your muscle for you using electronic pulses. And the Newbie is like that, but on steroids. So it will get you to activate all of the muscles at one time in a given muscle group, and do that while you're training. So it, in a way, can mechanically compensate for whatever deficiencies that you're not making as far as that mind-muscle connection and the full activation of a given muscle group. And it's sort of like a little bit of a mind-muscle connection prosthesis that makes you, use your muscles more effectively on a given lift.
So is it like it's basically an electrical stimulation of the muscle?
Yes.
So like a isotonic contraction more so. I've always been interested in that because like the comparison between eccentric, concentric, and then how does like the isometric or isotonic contribute to overload?
I don't know the details, but what I do know is that I think that they can adjust it to get different types of contractions and activate different types of fiber types individually based on where the location is and the frequency of the pulses they're using.
Nice. That's awesome. No, that's really interesting.
You got a discount code for that?
Can you send me one?
Did you find the price?
That's a pretty good plug, so we got to have a discount code for it.
Just send me one, man. We'll make a video review or something. I don't know.
I thought I don't know why the first thing you started talking about like training styles and technology, I thought of occlusion, like occlusion training, but I'm down for that. I think there's been, I don't know if you guys follow Westside Barbell out of Columbus, Ohio, but like they've patented quite a few different weird things. And they had, at one point, I've actually tried this. They had like a Smith machine that had like air compressor attached to it, and it would create, you could do isometrics against it, and it would match the force that you were putting in perfectly. And then when the coach would flip the switch, you'd fly through the motion. So it was awesome for like Olympic athletes. They could like begin a snatch, hold it at hips, and then when they hit the button, they finish the movement. And I'm not huge on isometrics, but I know like study-wise, like they're significant on paper. I just never really seen much of a progression with it.
Yeah, the actually one of those companies was at an NSCA event that I spoke at in February, and it was absolutely amazing because, well, it might be similar to what you're referring to, but the resistance was provided on the eccentric portion of the movement, so you basically have to fight it.
Yes.
And once again, it's totally theoretical. All the research on the eccentric damage, it doesn't always play out like long term. But I will say, I was sore after playing with it. So if that contributes to anything, but
okay. Well, I mean, like S7 gives me pumps, so I'm thinking of the same. It's kind of the same thing here.
I had to throw it in there.
I'm sorry. I was thinking of an analogy. That was the first one that popped into my head.
Of course it was.
So like, I actually kind of want to know, Joey, I have to ask, like, what do you think is the most overhyped ingredient in the industry? Because I really enjoy your input on things, but we always talk about good stuff, and I really want to know, like, what if you could eradicate an ingredient from mainstream, like, what would it be?
I'm trying to think of who I might piss off right now.
So you're like, yeah, I get it.
Like the S7 thing, I'll add some fuel to that fire, okay? 50 milligrams S7. I'm just not buying it. Not buying it.
That's like 8 milligrams of broccoli, man. You're telling me that doesn't do anything? You're crazy.
I don't care. I don't care because the dose range is just so low, and it's like if it sounds too good, folks, it probably is. And they're not alone. I mean, like, you can study something that's crap and come up with some data, and you can patent that thing that's crap, and it's still crap. You're just selling it to somebody, or you're blocking other people from selling a really similar version of that crap. It's there, and you can get data. It might not be good data, and you can have a patent. It's just not a good patent. And you're kind of sitting there wondering, like, what is my customer demographic now based off of the data that I have and everything? Who's going to buy this? And when you see that kind of stuff come out in formulas, you're like, I can tell what's going on here. Just the inclusion of something like that, you're just like, that one decision makes me question all the other decisions around this. But S7's not unique in that kind of sense.
Makes for a nice paragraph on the label.
Yeah, but I don't know because I've got a lot of relationships with a lot of companies, and even I don't know if I get anything from the guys who make S7 at this time, but that's just one of those things where it came across my desk, and I did do a little bit further digging into it, and I saw that dose range, and I saw the stuff that was in there, and I was just like, no, this doesn't pass my litmus test. I mean, Ben, you even talked about in the last podcast episode when you were talking to me with a different kind of supplier. I'll get in their shit really deep and find out exactly what's going on, because I'm a
I've
tough
watched the
customer
process.
myself.
I've gotten to watch Joey do this, and it's very funny.
I got really passionate about some chicken stuff.
Well, I have to say, I don't want to give too much of the story away, but I hooked Joey up with this ingredient provider that had something to do with chickens, and we're getting really nitty gritty on the incubation period and how old these chickens are and all this stuff. And Joey just nonchalantly throws out there that he has a long history working with chickens. And I don't know why, but I just lost it. Because when you kind of dig into companies, you have a joking sense about some stuff, but then I realized you were completely serious about chickens, and this wasn't fucking around. You were like,
it's don't fuck with me. I know chickens.
I don't fuck with chickens. I know chickens. And it was probably one of the funniest things I've ever heard. It was
nice.
That was one of the weirdest full circle things that had ever happened to me in my life, where I was in middle school, I was in FFA and all this stuff, and I was breeding chickens and stuff. I lived on a farm, and I didn't trust the hens. I didn't trust the hens because there were snakes, and the snakes would come and eat the chicken's eggs, and this happened several different times. And you get to a point where I'm gonna buy an incubator, and I'm gonna start incubating these eggs on my own. You candle them, and you watch the embryological development. Fucking 8 to 10 years later, you're in college taking an embryology class, and you're like, oh, I totally have done all this kind of stuff before, and I've watched these embryos develop. And then it comes further along where you're talking about different chicken products and sports nutrition, and you're all of a sudden these memories that I thought would never come in handy start flooding to the front.
When am I ever
going to
use this stuff?
And I'm just like, well, I'll be damned. Suddenly this makes all the sense I could have ever hoped for it to. And, that's where, your discernment on, how an ingredient might actually work, could come into play. And, even on that project, I still haven't made a final decision on what I want to do, because I found the optimal zone, of what I wanted, and nobody makes it. And there's several different reasons why. It could just be the commercial viability thing, or there's certain ethical barriers involved in that whole process. So we're still thinking about it. That might come later down the road, but as far as right now, it's something that we're shelving temporarily until we can find the right chickens.
What's really horrible too is I hate this, but I just have to know that if you go back to those companies in a year, and when Glaxon has really had its stride hit, they're going to be way more willing to do it. And I hate that about this industry. I had the same thing happen here. I couldn't work with companies when I first came on because they didn't trust me yet. But I'm excited for everyone to turn around and be like, wait, let's work with Glaxon, because I know it's going to happen personally.
There's a lot of yeses going on right now as far as the things that we want to do and the people that we're working with, and it's been really fortunate in that sense so far. And it's going to get to a point where we are going to kind of start saying no to some people, but we haven't gotten there yet, and that's really nice, because we're working with a couple of different guys. I mean, pretty much all three of you guys know that we're working with several different people and different companies, and different ingredient sourcing kind of stuff. And I was a little bit poo-pooed in the dark a little bit on the Anandaamide thing. I want to see if I can get some of that, but we worked that out, and that's coming down the pipe. Don't know how or where, but
this is the first mention of it, dude. This is can you tell Jacob and Justin about this, because this stuff is incredible. I told them about it, but
story time of Anandaamide. Okay, Anandaamide. No one's surprised we have cannabinoid receptors. Okay, we have cannabinoid receptors. People smoke pot, they get high. They take CBD, they get anti-inflammatory responses. You have cannabinoid receptors. But they were there either as a result of some sort of coevolution, or there's a completely analogous system inside the body. And we found out that there is an analogous system inside the body called the endocannabinoid system. And what that kind of stuff does is, if you get hurt, it stops the pain. If like say this slash on my hand, the Sam's dog bit me the other day. You know, there's some inflammatory responses that go on about this nice little crevice here that makes it not hurt to touch anymore. And that's where the endocannabinoids come in. So it's a bit of an anti-inflammatory process, but it's also a psychological process as well. And the endogenous ligand for the majority of the cannabinoid receptors is anandamide. And anandamide is arachidonic acid with little ethanolamine that, you know, came into contact with it. So you can look at the omega-6, I think arachidonic acid is, as a precursor to anandamide. So, you know, that's one way of increasing endogenous levels. But at the same time, you could look at, you know, arachidonic acid as a way of being a pro-inflammatory that could also facilitate muscle growth. But anandamide is named after one of the Buddhist disciples, Ananda, which means bliss. And usually anandamide can bring on those kinds of feelings. And it's, you know, since it's the endogenous ligand, it's usually some sort of like a happy kind of feeling you get when you've eaten a meal and you're like, the satiety sets in and you're full and you're peaceful and all that kind of stuff. It's also found natively in chocolate. You know, and I don't really think that's why people like chocolate. I think people like chocolate because it's got, you know, L-DOPA and all those other different, you know, kinds of alkaloids you find in chocolate in addition to anandamide. But the other interesting thing, because I, like many things, you know, many people's paths and roads cross in this industry. And there was quite a few years ago where I was looking into anandamide, and I found out one of the few naturally occurring sources of anandamide, aside from chocolate, are the genitals of sea urchins.
Nice.
And yeah.
Who found that out?
Is that what I've been drinking?
Somebody woke up one morning and was just like, man, I have got to go look at those sea urchin genitals. I mean,
some guy in South America was, you know, hanging out by the beach and he found a sea
feel
urchin.
fantastic.
He's like, I'm going to put this sea urchin's genitals in my mouth and see what happens. You know, that could have happened. But the other thing is, it actually has like a food purpose. It's called roe. It's called sea urchin roe. And actually in sushi, it's a huge thing. It's actually a delicacy in Japan. And they actually import a lot of the sea urchin genitals from South America to Japan to be used in sushi. So, you know, it's one of those things where they brought it in as part of their cuisine. I don't know if they just like the taste of sea urchin genitals or if they're actually trying to get high off the anandamide that's found within, you know, or what. So, you know, there's definitely substantiation of anandamide being in the food supply. So I think it's definitely something that should be considered a legitimate dietary ingredient. You know, it's just the more pure that one gets, you know, it turns into liquid because it's got a fatty nature, like a lot of other things, like alpha GPC. If you want to get that at 100%, it's going to be a liquid syrupy mess too. You know, so, you know, your potency is going to be compromised if we end up getting it into a powder. So it's not going to be 100%. It's going to be something 50% or less, you know, once we actually get it in the powder form. But either way, you know, it's something, there's something to be said about anandamide because it's going to be a feel ingredient. It's something that, you know, people are going to take that first dose and they're going to be like, whoa, you know, they're actually going to, you know, have their hair blown back a little bit. The question is, what are people going to do with it? That's what I want to know. Where's the application other than trying to legally feel high somehow? You know, that's where I want to see what people really do.
So Ben, how have you been enjoying your urchin balls?
So I get it in these little tiny bottles of liquid sea urchin balls. I think it's 60% this way, and they're gonna have a 40% powder, somewhere in that. But I'll tell you what, I have taken it quite a few different ways, timing wise, and like things that it's with. And the first time I took it, I got a very, very incredible euphoric feeling and a surge of creativity. I edited. Jacob saw this awesome looping background in the span of very little time.
Yeah, and it pissed me off, man. I spent like 3 hours on After Effects YouTube just trying to figure that out.
Yeah, it's not like an Adderall thing, but I just suddenly wanted to create. But anyway, I did some very quickly. yesterday I took it with Alpha Lion Superhuman, which already has like some PEAs and stuff in it. But I'll tell you what, the focus and like presentness training on it is incredible. I really hate ever comparing any of this stuff to drugs, but like it's the closest I've ever found to like a marijuana type feeling, while still like keeping your cognitive abilities, if anything, it may be more focused. So, but that's at 200 milligrams. I don't know what a lot of people are going to use it for. I don't think.
We don't even know like the commercially viable dose yet.
Yeah. That's kind of why they sent me these, to find out how much is too much.
Attaboy.
You're the perfect guy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, hey Ben, you like taking things. Let's just
Yeah. So I have a lot of these, and I've been just taking them at different times. Mike sent me a couple recommendations. Mike Bischoff, a couple of recommendations on like things to mix it with. Tylenol was one of them, which I thought was interesting.
And black pepper.
The black pepper is obvious, I think. That one made sense.
Not for the reasons you think. You don't want to use straight bioperin. Not on this one.
Right. That's what Mike was saying. Interesting. I don't know. I haven't done that one yet either. I want to take it with Serenity. Is something I'm very interested in pairing it with.
You're just not going to care about anything at all. if that you're gonna be, you might as well just go meditate, man. Just go meditate.
I don't need that.
Meditating above the ground or something, and don't even touch him. He's completely content like that.
Yeah, was that self-actualization?
I'm gonna text Ben one morning, and I'm just gonna get whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. Everything response, whatever.
I aspire to get there someday, but I just hold on to things too much for now.
Well, do we want to keep talking about this ingredient? Because I did have a question ingredient-wise for Joey.
Bring it on.
Ingredient topic. Well, and I don't know if you can even really answer this, because there's probably a lot of them, but it's like one of the questions that someone had posed for you was, there's ingredients that you get real excited about when you read about them, things like that, and then you try them and you're like, fuck. Or the opposite, is there anything that stands out, one or the other or both, that you kind of were surprised or disappointed? Like, man, I really thought that was going to be more, or holy shit, this sort of really kind of blew me up more than I expected.
So something that I found to be underwhelming, I'll put it that way, was a type of a flavonoid that comes from a specific type of a flower, and it's called scutellarin, which like has a lot of interesting antioxidant properties, and I think it also operates on the GABA receptors just a little bit. And I think it was being marketed as a nootropic. I just didn't feel it, even Zionamide personally for me kind of falls into that category, because I tried it, it's a little bit there, but and then I was like, okay, the next day after my first dose of Zionamide, I did like a whole gram of it in a DR capsule, and I was just like, I'm just gonna smash myself over the head with it, really see what it does.
Right. And
I was just like, nothing. I was
Not
just
there.
like, there just wasn't there. And well, sure that there's a huge problem currently with a lot of bioflavonoids, and that absorption is a paramount issue. So there's a couple different ways you can go around that. You can use the DR cap technique. You can co-ingest it with some sort of a fat in order to help increase its bioavailability into the lymphatic system, or there's just not much else. The other options that there are is doing some sort of more expensive, like a liposomal type of technology. And for the ones that are currently on the market, I don't know which ones I trust. I'm going to need someone to be pretty blatantly open with how it's all manufactured and put together, and how it all makes sense in order to really buy into it. But I think that people will address this probably over the next 5 years in a way that probably hasn't been looked at before, because it's just a glaring problem. It's a glaring problem not just with the bioflavonoids, but with a lot of different plant-based compounds that just don't have very good absorption. They're rampant. They're rampant on the marketplace. They're rampant in their use, but it's just that there's a lot of hope behind these in vitro mechanisms that just won't translate until we address the absorption issue. So for anyone else that's out there watching, we gotta address this somehow. But other than that, something that blew my hair back that I wasn't expecting to, NMN. The first day I took NMN, I could not believe it. Like my whole brain was buzzing. And
What
I
is
was
that?
like,
What is that now?
NMN is beta nicotinamide mononucleotide. It's pretty expensive too, but you know that well, especially in the dosages that I was taking. You know, you can probably the commercially available form is probably anywhere in the 125 to 250 milligram range. But the first day that I took it, I took the David Sinclair dose, which I believe was like 2 grams. And when I took that the first day, I was just like, oh my, this is incredible.
I know you did tell me about that.
Can you explain like what that feeling is like?
To explain what it's so yeah, it was a very nice, productive, like a hum was going on inside my brain. But it was one that, you know, I wasn't like worried like, God, something's wrong. I was like, this is going right, and it feels like all the gears are turning at the same time in like a beautiful kind of like a unison. And you know, after repeated dosages, you don't get that, you know, time after time. And I'm one of these guys who, you know, I do 2 grams of niacin in the morning. So, you know, I was talking to Justin about this earlier. I was like, my NAD pool is pretty well like already overflowing all the time anyway, you know, and you know, to throw that on top of my little niacin fire, to have it actually have a palpable result was really cool. And I was like, wow, this is just a shitty little B vitamin derivative. You know, it's not that much more fancy than niacin. But to feel like that, and there wasn't a skin flush or anything like that, because it's slightly different than regular niacin is. I just like it. I just like it, and I like what it does. And it basically feeds all your sirtuins. So taking like resveratrol or whatever, you know, to work on that aspect of anti-aging, it's the two have to be put together. You know, you can't just, you know, say we're activating sirtuins and that's great and all, but you know, that's going to be limited by the amount of how much NAD precursors is there in the pool. So, you know, to do both, that's your best case scenario. And this is completely outside the realm of like sports nutrition and everything, but you know, to feel different things like that's what really interests me. Like stuff where you're like, I'm trying to find a feeling that no one's really ever felt before, and try to like bring that to the masses if I can.
Well, we are here to help.
Yeah.
Anytime you need, right?
Wow, that was intense. I missed out on the T-shirt. You know, did you guys talk about this already? Like, did you plan this T-shirt?
Did we plan this? No, we didn't plan this.
I just got mine today.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm just making sure.
I've had this for like 2 weeks, and it's actually like it's in the starting lineup now. I'm not ashamed of that.
I think they used. I mean, this is a really high quality
American Apparel.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with what's on the shirt. It's just the freaking shirt itself.
Yeah, it's
like,
pretty awesome.
It's so comfy.
Yep.
Yeah, little next level action. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Joey, could you talk about David Sinclair? You mentioned that he had a dose of NMN. I'm not sure. Is that like a formulator or something?
David Sinclair is actually a researcher at Harvard, and he's got a couple of books that are out. He's all about studying the different effects of aging and the different mechanisms that cause aging to occur, and how we're going to actually come up with practical ways to try to either reverse it or slow it down. So personally, my belief is I don't think we're going to be able to reverse aging. And, you know, if you really think about that on like a cellular level, you know, what are you really doing if you're reversing aging on a cellular level? It's not, you know, something as simple as, you know, making your gray ball hairs go away or your wrinkles start filling in. You're turning the clock back on a cell that's already decided that it's going to be a skin cell or a blood vessel cell or a heart cell or a muscle or what have you. And you're bringing it back to a more stem-like state. And if that were possible, is that really practical? Like, do you really want to like revert your adult cells into more of like a stem cell like state? What if you did this for long enough and, you know, it causes, you know, your structural components to become compromised? You definitely don't want your bones to suddenly just become stem cells all of a sudden, and all of a sudden you're just like a pile of mush, you know. And that's extreme. I know that's extreme. That's like, if this worked and it worked amazingly and people were writing home to their mothers who were in the nursing home telling them, my God, you've got to do this, it's going to reverse your aging, It's just that the number one side effect is it turns you into a blob of cells. You know, it doesn't
It's
make
the
a lot of
Jurassic Park.
sense.
It's the Jurassic Park question that we kept asking if we could. We didn't ask if we should.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think that's going to happen more and more. I think Serenity is kind of one of those cases. Could doing like a full 3 capsule dose of that, you know, I can't do that. I'm not that high stress. You know,
Right,
one
I can't do it
capsule is
either.
good enough.
I didn't know that you guys weren't doing 3 caps because that was the
That's what I do every day.
I mean, I did it once. I did it once, and I was like, nope.
I
Well,
think a
you
little
can space
tangent.
them out.
Yeah, that little tangent about what would happen if we actually anti-age is like the perfect and like representation of made with real science. Every single time I watch a video with Joey, he has one of those like real science tangents and reminds us that like supplements, it's kind of boring. Like sports nutrition isn't that really that crazy. Like, there's this possibility that we can do this crazy stuff. Do you feel like your background in microbiology like gives you a different perspective on the industry as a formulator?
I mean, I'm more genetics and biochemistry, not microbiology, but
Sorry, yeah.
you know, I think every formulator has a unique perspective that they bring to the table. And, you know, the stuff you're going to hear from me is not going to be the stuff you hear from somebody else. And the stuff that they say is going to be through a completely different lens than what I've got going on. You know, I don't think in terms of like training and macros and all that other kind of typical stuff that you have in a sports nutrition lifestyle. You know, I'm thinking, you know, what are the cellular mechanisms that I've got to hit in order to get the kind of result that I want? And what is the result? And is it acute? Is it long-term? You know, how do I look at it in that sense of, you know, if I can do it to this cell, then I can do it to the rest of the body and it's okay. You know, and I think that everyone's going to have their own different perspective that does provide some pretty significant value. I don't think anyone's got an exclusivity on being right. You know, that's I think that kind of way of thinking is going to be toxic. And I think it's changing, actually. And I think people are kind of starting to own their shit when it comes to that kind of stuff and, you know, being who they are and owning their perspective. And I think it's great. I think it caters actually to like even different customer demographics. There's some people that, you know, if I'm not going to talk about, you know, what kind of like you know, deadlift training regimen they should have, you know, then they're not interested in talking to me. Well, yeah, to an extent, but I'm going to tell you some stuff that, you know, the guy who is telling you your deadlift training regimen isn't going to tell you because they're not going to think to tell you that kind of stuff. So, and it also goes into the saying of you shouldn't just have your whole stack by one company. You should mix it up and try to get into these different kind of realms based on your needs. And, you know, there's enough different, you know, market categories where you can kind of mix and match and figure your way out through all that.
Right. I definitely, I think that I refer to the industry as a spectrum pretty often. Like C4 has to exist for specimen to exist on that same spectrum, right? Like you can't, I'm not a fan of people saying like this stuff shouldn't exist, like these entry-level pre-workouts. That has to exist for people to evolve up to specimen. I think there's like a lifetime of each consumer finding their way. No one jumps in with Glaxon and Morphogen, it just doesn't happen. But I also like the idea that everyone has their strengths. Like when I was, where was I? I was at NutriBio. The merchants of Vitamin Shop told me that BPI just cannot sell protein. Their protein just doesn't work. And I think you guys have found a really fun little niche for your company. I can't believe how much Serenity's actually grown and created an impact on the consumers. So, and I can't really think of a company that has had more like acute feelings to their products. Like when you take Glaxon, you feel it, no matter kind of really what it is.
Well, and that's something, Jacob, you said you take 3 caps of, so we all take, because I still take it like from time to time, I just don't take 3. And we're all kind of like have similar training and eating styles, but we all use it in a different way and all find value of it. You said you take full dose, Jacob?
Yeah, I mean, I've taken the full dose every day for about the past week.
That's awesome.
But, you know, it's just a part of my regimen at this point. I go to the gym in the morning right before I head over to the store. I take my 3 capsules with my Leviathan Ire. And honestly, like at first, I'd say the first 3 days, the acute effects were very, very strong. But now I just notice throughout the day, things that would normally, you know, throw me on edge or make me feel really tense. You know, like I can't always identify stress, but usually physically my symptoms show up before mentally. But I noticed those physical symptoms don't show up as frequently as they used to. So, but then again, I'm a 230-pound guy, relatively lean, so maybe the dose effect is it might be different for some people. So
I take my pre-workout. I take 3 capsules pre-workout. I really like it when I'm taking like high stim stuff because it helps ease me into the rest of my day. It kind of sets the tone for my evening, which I really like because I can come home from the gym, kind of be like still hyper excited from the gym, plus the stims and stuff like that. So sedative kind of gives me like a timed release. Like I got to get out in an hour.
You know, that's a good point too, because so when I've taken it, now we just went back to the gym this week and really training like an asshole for the last few days. and what I forgot was, because that's a good point, both of you guys are talking about is, you know, I forgot how hard that, especially because I took some pretty aggressive stims each day. And I forgot how hard that hits me when I get a real legitimate, like heavy workout, which I have not had the last few months. You know, a couple times lately this afternoon, I was like, man, I'm hurting exactly like Ben, what you were saying. We've talked about this endlessly. If you work out in the morning, but you still have all this work to do, just like what Jacob was saying, you got to have something to sort of balance you out. So I did use some Serenity. I think I used 2 caps the other day. It does, but I still haven't done the pre-workout thing. I think that's pretty cool, but I haven't done that yet.
Well, and it's also crazy because I will get customer, you know, feedback. Some people use it for like sleep that we recommend it to at the store, and they, you know, even day-to-day stress or anxiety. A lot of our customers report a almost sedated feel, like not tired, but they just feel physically just more relaxed. However, me, then again, I'm always kind of up here. So,
well, I know if I take, because the first time I took 3 caps with sedative, or no, I was talking to Michael and we're like, well, what do you want to, how much you want to push it? I took 4 caps with sedative before bed the one time. And the next day I was like, I can never do that again.
No.
What happened?
I was just like, I felt like I slept so good, man. And I woke up and I was not groggy. I was not tired. I felt great, but I was like, I don't give a fuck what I have to do today. I was like, I'm looking over. I was like, you know, I'm looking at my phone. There's like, you know, messages. I know I have to get going. We have calls and stuff like that. I was like, don't care. Doesn't matter. I'm like, I'm fine. I'm going to stay right here. I was like, wow, I can't do this.
That's what I noticed the most. And, you know, it in a sense, reorients or it gets you in your relationship with cortisol to kind of reset a little bit, and it makes you realize in that sense, you know, cortisol is there for some good reasons too. You know,
Right.
it's absolutely a motivating force in your life, whether it's making you go to the bathroom, making you get your shit done at work, or, you know, if you're hungry, you know, it is something that pushes you to do things. Because if you didn't have it, you really just wouldn't care. And I always like make the analogy, you know, the house could be burning down all around you, and you're laying in the middle of the floor, and you're like, no,
Whatever.
don't care. Let the roof fall in. You know, come on down. I'm fine. Don't worry about me.
At least I'll get some sleep. That was me. I was like, I guarantee I have 0 cortisol in my body right now. None.
I'm gonna try this tonight. I'm gonna do this tonight. I really want to experience this.
Just literally, I'm telling you, man, like, you just make sure you don't have anything really, really important to do, because it will be very hard to talk yourself into doing it.
I think that it's nice though, where you can make a product where it's like a double-edged sword, like that. You know, it's like, you know, be careful what you wish for, because, you know, once that cortisol is pretty well on the floor, you know, you're gonna realize what you've been missing this whole time, or what you haven't been missing. You know,
I mean, I slept fantastic, you know, so for that part of it. Like,
well, honestly, I had to do a little bit of self-evaluation after our last cast, talking about Serenity a little bit, because all you guys were talking about doing it before bed, and I'm over here like, I do it before my day gets started. So I'm like, what's wrong with me?
Well, to be fair, Justin specifically said that it would be bad. I just got this from Justin, that in the morning you need your cortisol and stuff like that. So I actually thought that logically it would make sense for me to take it at the beginning of my day, because I'm a big stressor. I worry a lot. So it would be nice throughout the day. but Justin kind of scared me out of it, to be honest with you.
Well, I just meant some people would take it as soon as they wake up, and I just said I would avoid doing that.
Okay.
Right.
Because like Jacob, you're taking it after your workout in the morning. I think
that's.
I mean, I have separate.
That's what I would do too.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like I wake up at like 5 a.m. and then
Right.
by 9 a.m. before I go to the store, it's in me. So.
Well, because like the whole cortisol thing, we've had this conversation a lot. I don't think I've had this conversation with Joey though. This would be a good one to involve you too. We've talked about how the cortisol and caffeine thing, where if I take a certain pre-workout, I can take 1.5 grams of caffeine as soon as I wake up, and it won't do anything to me normally. But if I can take 300 milligrams in the afternoon, it feel really, really good. And it's that whole just the caffeine, like at least for me, we started talking about caffeine timing and where your most efficient time of your day as far as your cortisol levels. And it was all kind of this fascinating conversation. It was, I can't remember who had posted the conversation before, but I was like, wow, it's interesting. So I started messing around with it just based on your sleeping patterns and all this other stuff, how you can sort of fit caffeine the most optimized way into your day. Like that's for me, like I can't take. That's where the theanine pre-workout thing in me started, because I would try to work out and I'd take theanine in the morning and pre-workout if I can go to sleep. I'm like, I can't do this. It's like, who stopped putting this stuff in here? Because then I can't use it.
So as far as how that question is framed, like, I've run across this completely anecdotally. So it's just trial and error kind of stuff. I think, I can probably last 3 to 4 hours in the morning without any caffeine before I really need to start reaching for it.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's not what I do. But I've done some personal testing where you find out, do I really need the caffeine the first thing in the morning? And I found out that that's not the case. It's just part of the habit that I have.
Right.
But and there's also, I've got what I call my daily caffeine quota. That once you reach a certain amount of caffeine or a certain point in time of day, that there's no real point in taking anymore, because you're either gonna have a hard time falling asleep or you're gonna have high blood pressure, and it's just one of the two things that will happen. And then it's another interesting about getting hooked on caffeine and getting a tolerance to caffeine, and once you do hit your caffeine quota, you lose some of that psychological magic in exchange for this physiological what is going on kind of thing going on. And I realized once I'm over probably 500 milligrams for the day, that it goes completely from the psychological fun stuff to the it's physiological. Not only do you have high blood pressure, you could have high blood pressure even with some weird vasodilation going on, and you don't necessarily know why that's actually happening. I had a phone call. That all work out?
We heard you.
We're
Yeah.
good.
Okay. But yeah, and it's just the spillover, because once you're no longer stimulated in that brain sense, you are going to be stimulated in the body sense, and however that wants to manifest itself, which can be inconvenient, or it might be exactly what you need. Like if you're training at 5 p.m. in the afternoon and you do have that high blood pressure, it's actually going to enhance how your maximum output is going to be, and the actual force that you can generate, because all the plumbing inside your body is, all the pipes are tight, and you're going to be able to push more blood more effectively. Versus if you take too many vasodilators and your blood pressure goes too low and you try to work out, you can hardly move much weight at all. And that happens in two different kind of ways, because you have a hard time developing a contraction because all that nitric oxide is pushing calcium out of your muscles. The other thing is you get too good of a pump too quick, and you can't do that many reps, and it ruins your workout. You can get a half or 2/3 of a workout done, but you reach that point of maximum blood flow pretty quickly, and you're like, I'm pretty well shot, because I overdid it on too much citrulline or too much nitrates or whatever it is. And, it just completely kills your ability to do the rest of the workout.
When I come out to Austin, can you make a formula that literally does the low blood pressure thing? I want to see how bad of a pump you can formulate. I would really like to know, in one set, can I get a full pump?
I can pump you all the way to the hospital, Ben.
Because I've had that before, where like you take something and I feel like 2 exercises in, it's usually arms. It's like the bad one for me. Like my arms are so pumped, like my triceps look like loaves of bread. There's no definition left. I can't even squeeze it, you know. But it's kind of fun still.
Yeah.
I got a love-hate relationship with that kind of effect. You know, sometimes it's great, you know, if you're, you know, in good trained shape and everything. But like for just getting back to the gym to blow it out on pumps, you know, I've been in the gym for like 45 minutes and I'm like, there's nothing more I can do. Like I'm already so pumped right now. Like, you know, I can try to go for more, but there's already like plenty of micro tears that have occurred on my actual tissue.
Right,
like there's no real need to push it any further after that point.
And
which
yeah, well, yeah, I was gonna say, like, in that sense, like, too much of that for me, exactly what you were saying. Like, I have the way that I train is RPE based, but it's also like I am very strict on how much volume I'm accumulating from week to week. Well, man, if I have a stupid pump due to all these, you know, nitrates, like I almost have a hard time hitting the required volume and hitting the required threshold that I'm trying to get past. So yeah, I totally agree.
I had some consumers complain that Specimen didn't have enough pump in it, and I was like, "What kind of training are you guys doing?" Because like Specimen's enough for me. Like I can get
it is.
a good pump.
No doubt.
People are like, we want more, and I'm like, I don't know. The times that I've added plasma surge to it, it's been like that effect almost where it's like almost too much. If you're really looking forward to like a long squat session, like that's really a bit of a cock block.
Yeah, well, I've had this conversation, Ben. I don't know if you have recently. You know, stacking is. I mean, people. You know, the stacks are. So what I've said to people sometimes, they'll be like, and it's another one of those answers that throws them off is, what can I stack? You know, I'm having this effect when I stack this with this, and I was like, take the pump product out and just go back to just using the pre-workout, something like Specimen or something like that. I'm like, because exactly like what Joey was talking about, if you have all these stimulants and it's like energizing you, but then you're also fatiguing yourself and you get that worn out pump sensation. You just have like this convergence of two things that are just doing opposite kind of things to you. And it's like, so you're still feeling the effects of the stimulants, but you can't really lift anything. It's like, well, you don't always have to, I know this is going to like really like mess some people up, but you don't always have to stack and stack and stack and stack sometimes. Cause it was the other day, I just used Specimen by itself. The pumps were insanely good, but it was just because of the workout I was doing.
Well, there's other ways you can kind of like modulate this too. You can choose like, you know, if you've got a 5-day-a-week workout and you're doing different body parts on each week, maybe you're going to rotate what body part you're going to add your pump stuff into to stimulate growth in that kind of sense, which does make sense. Or you can do it to every body part every day of the week, and you know, you can do it that way. But I think with all that pump stuff, it's going to be harder to get like a real good read on how much strength you've actually got, you know, because you're artificially putting this blood into the muscle, and you're going to end up, you know, reaching a point of failure earlier than you would otherwise. I'm gonna kick this back to Ben because he had something to say.
I completely forgot that was a great answer. I was gonna say I had the funniest message the other day. This person messaged me. They're like, "Do you feel like pump products are bullshit? Because I can get a great pump. Actually, I tried upping my carbs and sodium, and it was amazing." And I was like, "Yes,
water,
like that. That's supposed to happen. Like that's supposed to happen before you start the supplements." And I kind of like joked with people. I try not to play like the I'm better than you thing, but like some of these people that take like bazillions of different products in a stack, I can get a better pump with water, salt, and carbs and proper training. Like I love nitrates, I love nitrogen, I love all that stuff, but it's like icing on the cake for me. If you can't maintain a pump without supplements, why would you be adding anything to the equation?
I can get a really good pump just going. We have like a back room in the gym where there's like no airflow whatsoever. I just walk back there, man. I'm like, the pump is insane just from the heat, and you just drink some water and, like you said, some salt. You're good to go, man.
Yeah. I feel like when you go to the beach and you see like the big guys always get more pumped. Like the guys that are worried about like looking smaller, like getting dehydrated, like you probably aren't eating correctly if that heat doesn't do something.
Well, I mean, yeah, that goes back to basic contest prep 101. I mean, the people who dehydrate themselves are already, you know, cutting themselves out of looking good
Yeah.
The pump is just not going to happen. But yeah, I can't believe, on a little separate note, that I have customers that come in and will complain about, like, for example, Komodo pump or hydraulic, which are both great non-stem pump products. Man, I didn't get a pump on that. What? Like, it doesn't work. I'm like, well, how many hours of sleep did you get last night? What do you mean? Or how much water are you drinking? Or what are your carb intake like? Oh, I'm on keto, which they're not really on keto. They're eating too high of protein. But yeah, so there's a little Jacob struggle.
Well, that's a huge point because, I understand on that retail level, you deal with customers on a daily basis. There's one thing that you certainly learn when you're in retail is that human beings come in so many different shapes and forms and flavors that it's silly. That and I kind of like that you do have to like stay on your toes because customer service is like a number one kind of thing, especially in retail. But I'm over here way in the back, and I'm designing these products for humans. And everybody's different,
You don't have to worry about it.
Well, everyone's got to at some point in time, and on a lot of our formulas, if you read the fine print, there's always going to be salt, water, and carbs that are key components of a lot of our different powders that we have. Because you do need to check those bases, and if you're and half of the trickery in these products is simply just getting people to consume more water.
Your water is very high on your products. I've noticed, like 24 ounces, stuff like that.
Yeah, even like the sleep aid is like 12 or 16 ounces, I think, right? Like the sedative.
Personally, like when I'm coming up with flavor formulations and stuff, I like to think, most people are used to picking up a 16-ounce bottle of water and making whatever with that. And because of that, because people buy them in 24 and 32 packs and all that, it's the most convenient way to put it in those kinds of terms. Oh, it's just one of these bottles of water? Okay. And the other thing is, working on the whole ratios of osmolality so you can get better gastric emptying. And, you've got to have a certain amount of your actives in grams, and then you've got a certain amount of the water. And if you get those two things in the right kind of ratios, then you can actually get the gut to release its contents under, the 60-minute mark that we usually suggest with the DR caps. So there's ways with the salt and the carbs and the actual water components itself that, there's actually quite a lot of magic to that does, facilitate better absorption because the stomach's going to empty its contents a lot faster. And what absorbs in that also can change based on the different concentration of the different things that are dissolved in that water. So yes, part of it is getting people to drink more water. The other thing is convenience and people's familiarity with a 16-ounce bottle. And then the other part is, there's actually some method to that madness as far as absorption is concerned.
I know, I think you wanted to talk about some new products that you guys are working on. I know I got a bunch of questions. Everybody wants to know if you guys are making a protein. I get that one out of the way.
Yes, I will. I'll confirm it. Yes, we're working on a protein.
All right.
There's a couple different ways of it.
A Glaxon protein. There's chickens going to be involved?
No, but it will be along the lines of being something that weird.
Nice. Nice.
There's ways that'll fit in your traditional molds. We'll do an isolate that is pure as pure can be, but the only thing that's really going to be cool about an isolate would be the flavors. What kind of weird flavors are you going to throw at me to make this a Glaxon kind of thing? And then the other thing is my personal favorite is the blend, and it's they're gonna have some things that are like other blends you've seen before. There's some of your usual suspects, but where it's going to be uniquely different is where it goes beyond that and looking at proteins that you have not seen on a sports nutrition supplement facts panel before, and you're going to be like, what the hell is this? Where did it come from? And
the urchin
why am
balls.
I taking this?
Yep.
No, I mean, It's that weird, man. It's that weird. And you're going to see this and you're going to be like, what? And then you're going to be like, well, I get it. Yeah, I do get it. Because there's a lot of the things that, when we try to be innovative in any one of these given categories, is not only do we try to be, kind of forward thinking, but also a little bit backward thinking too. Like, let's look at this from a very simplistic kind of standpoint, kind of like in the way that Xeno is. If we're going to try to innovate in the EAA space, well, what are we really trying to do here? And we have a lot of those questions, coming up with the protein. We don't have an official launch date for that anytime soon. But we do have a couple other products that are in the pipe too. The one that's coming out, well, I'll be filming the Supplement Lab episode for it tomorrow, which is the Archimmune product, which that one's interesting. And, we're launching it at a time where there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. And,
what I hear.
The inspiration for it did come during the whole COVID thing. But, I don't think that's really going to go away. And I think people are going to care about their immune health more, like I said previously, more in the modern day than they ever have before. Because when you got this whole problem solution kind of thing, and I'm not going to wait on a vaccine, and I don't even know how I'm going to really feel about vaccines once they're available. I'm not going to be one of the first people in line.
I don't.
Those are my favorite parts of like the reaction to the virus was we had all these formulators be like, we're going to work on an immune product and it's going to be special, and they come back out, it's like vitamin C and NAC and. Like Joey sat down and then he came back the next week and he was like, this is how the virus works. These are the pathways we're going to attack. It was like there was just a completely different level of expertise in looking at it. And I really do think that you look at things on a bigger scale.
I can't talk like that on the internet though. I can't say, oh, this is what we're doing.
I know, but like you took it seriously. Like, you looked at it on a different scale than just vitamin C and zinc. It was nice.
Well, it's disappointing to me personally to see this almost immediate saturation with vitamin C, zinc, elderberry, echinacea, and, just once again, your usual suspects. And not to say that those things are bad, but, it's, come on, man, give me something better than that. Give me something that's gonna, blow me away as far as like, oh wow, this is that. All right,
Yeah,
but let's go back to what you just talked about. That's when I think probably I had my aha moment with Glaxon. I think Ben, you and I were talking about this, is when I saw Xeno, because you see the amino acid product, and I've said it many times. People ask me about amino products all the time, and I was like, it's an amino product. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, I have trouble just even getting excited to tell someone about an amino product, and I saw that one. And I was like, what? This is, and then you kind of like, and the more we see from you guys, I was like, exactly what you just said. You're like, okay, what are we doing here? Are we just going to throw some more shit out here to say we have one? Or are we going to really try to do something here that makes sense or maybe pushes some boundaries a little bit? And it was the amino product was the first one that I saw from you guys, because that was one of the early products. And I was like, huh. That's interesting. I was like, I've said constantly, I was like, how do you make an amino product cool? I was like, you can't, but you guys did.
I don't even think it's that cool.
Right. But it's like, well, what can you do? It's like, what can you do with it? Right. And then you're like, all right, well, like that's right. That's how bad that category is. Because you're like, well, this idea that makes perfect sense. I was like, well, why didn't anybody else think of this before?
I agree. And as far as like the intents and functions of like amino acid products, you are stuck in a bit of a box, and you've got to find out, what can I do in this box that makes a little bit more sense than what we've been doing previously. Just some more sense, please. For the love of God, can we get something that makes a little bit more sense?
We've got the 9 down. Like we get it. We get it. We want to have 9 in there. Can we just maybe try something else?
But the research hasn't been done on optimizing those ratios.
Right.
They're out there, and people do different ratios. I mean, obviously leucine's going to be the headliner of that group every single time, but how does that really make sense? Because there's going to be a saturation point of leucine. I think what I'd read in the research is you really maximize mTOR potential at 5 grams of leucine, and anything above that, you're really not getting anywhere. And
Is that what Lane Norton's dissertation was on?
What?
Wasn't that what Lane Norton's dissertation was on? Yeah. Yeah, I remember it was like a leucine pulsing, I think.
I mean, that was his time with Cybation, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I always feel like when you guys present your new SKUs, it like answers a question I didn't know that I was asking. Like,
Ooh,
like,
that's dude. That is like the best shit I think I've ever heard. That is so fucking true.
Yeah, well,
like, wow, I didn't even. Yeah, good one.
That's a really.
This usually feeds into my analogy of Glaxon as Elon Musk and Tesla, but that pumps their egos up a little bit too much. So, like, I like usually when I see the new SKU, I'm like, I didn't even know I needed this. Like Serenity coming out, I was like, I definitely needed this, but I wasn't even looking for it. So I like that angle you guys have.
Well, I try to, as far out as I go with the science on a lot of these different YouTube videos and stuff, I do think about like the end consumer and like, why should they care? Why should they care? And this whole episode, I did some of the whiteboard stuff for like tomorrow's
I saw the viruses behind you.
Yeah. So I'm basically like teaching people about their immune systems and their guts and all kinds of other stuff. And that's another really cool thing about this product coming up is like I may have the audacity to say it's the first ever sports nutrition product that actually contains live bacteriophages in it.
We had a comment asking you to talk about that. So yeah, please do.
Okay. So bacteriophages, we have a trademark blend of 4 different bacteriophages. 3 of them are T4 bacteriophages, which are these morphologies right here with the nice head and the tail and the legs and all that kind of stuff. And then the other one, it doesn't have legs. It's a Cyphoroviridae. But what these things are is it is a virus. And, a lot of people, of course, there's some shock value here. Ooh, is virus in a pill, but it doesn't affect humans. And that's what's really cool about this. No, these are viruses that are selective toward usually, a species or a genus of a given bacteria, and they only infect bacteria, and they kind of disappear once that species of bacteria is eradicated. So this ingredient is actually made by a company here in the United States, and they've got this blend of bacteriophages that are targeted for E. coli. And they market it primarily as a prebiotic ingredient. And how is it a prebiotic? Well, it basically goes in there and it affects all the E. coli that may be inside of your GI tract, and it kills them. And it's essentially their dead bodies that are lying around your gut that become the food for the other bacteria. So these are viruses that are specifically targeting bad bacteria that are in your gut that are not going to provide you any advantage in health whatsoever, but you come across them in food or, just through sticking your fingers in your mouth after you picked up dog shit in the yard or whatever you did that, maybe somehow cross-contaminated you with E. coli. But through the use of these bacteriophages, we can actually use that to kill those things off, to essentially clear these bad bacteria from your gut and use their dead bodies to feed the good bacteria and help those populations actually go up as these other populations go down. There's also some alluding to this actually being a predator-prey dynamic inside the actual GI tract. So, I always like to refer to the human gut microbiome as like this beautiful savanna. And, whenever you take these probiotics, you might be increasing the population of zebras and wildebeest. But one of the things you don't think about is the fact that if you have too many zebras and wildebeest, they're going to eat all your fucking grass. And then if you don't have any fucking grass, then the elephants won't show up. The birds are going to go fly somewhere else. And it causes a complete destabilization of the ecosystem. So if you introduce, a flock of lions here, then if you bring those into the ecosystem, they're going to kill off some of the extra zebras and wildebeest and stuff, and the grass can actually grow. So, and I've got like a whole soapbox that I will get on in the supplement lab episode, but it's my belief that this predator-prey dynamic is kind of essential because it could quite very well be possible that these bacteriophages are what are referred to as keystone species in the human gut microbiome. And there's even a human gut phagiome that includes about, I would say, like 21 other species of viruses that these guys aren't even a part of. So in case you didn't know,
Wow.
now you know.
Okay. Well, so can I ask before we go on to the product too much more? I think because I get a lot of questions about this too, like this ingredient that you have in here. I don't know how much you have to go into it. Or just curious, like how does that end up in your product? Like how does that process go? Like do you know somebody? Do you meet them at one of these things, or does somebody contact you and say, hey, I've got this really cool shit we're working on? Like how does that magic sort of come about?
Is this legal, first of all? Like the virus? Is that DMAA?
So yes, it is DMAA. This is actually, all right, so there's a little history on these things. They were discovered in, I want to say 1917. I did my show prep earlier, so my figures might be slightly off. But there was a considerable amount of research that was done on these up until about the end of World War II, when broad spectrum antibiotics came out. Because the reason why they were looking at bacteriophages and bacteriophage cocktails in general was to try to create specified groups of these viruses that would go after different types of bacteria for things like, cholera or typhoid or different noroviruses and stuff that really pretty much caused diarrhea back then, because back in those days you could essentially die from having too much diarrhea. So they were trying to target those bad bacteria inside the human body to just simply take them out. And the cool thing about it is there's not really any side effects, because these viruses don't affect human cells whatsoever. It's just that it's not on their menu. So at about World War II, when, penicillin and amoxicillin and all that became way more used, those were broad spectrum antibiotics. They, in my opinion, those are more of like a scorched earth type of mentality. You got an infection with this type of bug, so let's just go ahead and drop a nuke and kill all of them. And that's not necessarily something you want to do. And even every time that you do take a regimen of antibiotics, it's pretty well recommended that you do take a probiotic when you're done, or you could get a yeast infection, or you could have some sort of weird kind of, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or what have you, that, taking high dose and broad spectrum antibiotics tends to takes out the whole savanna. You're burning the whole savanna, and there's few left, if any. But when it comes to the phages, they're targeting one species specifically. So we do have a history of use prior to 1994. That's part of the DMAA thing. The other part of the DMAA thing is that these things are grasped because they don't have any kind of side effects on the human organism, as far as self is concerned.
So it's really saved by the 1994 part, not the fact, because it's not found in our diet, I'm assuming.
It's actually all right. So if you want to end up getting a pretty good amount of bacteriophages the natural way, say you don't want to take this supplement, you can go to the ocean and you can take a mouthful of seawater and you can get a ton of them that way. So people who live at the beach actually have a bit more of a diverse what do you call it, a gut phagiome than say someone who lives in the middle of Kansas would.
Interesting.
Well, shit.
Yeah, sorry. So the question was how it gets to be into your product. But I guess it's a little bit more about like.
All right. So I have a lot of ideas and a lot of experience in this industry, and nobody came to me with this. I had to go find it. I had to go find the bacteriophages. I was like, I want them. I don't know who makes them, but I'm going to find a way to get them in.
On Facebook Marketplace or something.
I've got over a decade of Googling under my belt, and I've got a talent for finding these kinds of things, and and they're not that far off, because I'm not the first guy to do this. Life Extension's got bacteriophages. I first learned about them probably 6 years ago from Arthur Andrew Medical, which is a really good enzyme company. They make a couple of things that actually enhance like amino acid absorption from protein, but they also were one of the first companies that I noticed that actually had bacteriophages. And I was like, when I run across an ingredient or something cool and new like that, I don't think, is this what I need? Is this what my body needs? I'm like, no, I want that hanging on the walls inside of here. Okay, part of this is the thrill of the hunt for me, because I'll go and I'll find like a far out ingredient, and I'll be like, I don't know if that's ever been inside of a human being before, but it will be inside of me. You know, like I'm gonna put this
and
here
Ben
somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been inspired. You know, it's funny, when I first met the Glaxon guys, they were singing high praises on NMN and MN, right? And I kind of put it aside, but I love this this hunt of new ingredients. I feel like I'm inspired.
Lord knows we need it.
Yeah. So I was joking with Mike and Joey that I wanted to send some of my Anandaamide to you two to add to the next Smirk.
Ooh.
Joey, is that something that you would? Is that would that? Because I have the goods to do this. Would that help with Smirk V2?
I'm in. Well, all right. So you have the vials. Do you drink a whole vial? Is that how this goes?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in.
I am told that it was tested out to be 200 grams in each one, at 60% purity.
200 milligrams.
200 milligrams. I apologize. 200 milligrams. Okay. So it's 120 milligrams of net anandamide. It's very quick, though. I will tell you, like, in terms of.
Does it come and go?
45 minutes, like, dude, like 30 minutes in, I'm flying high at 30 minutes. Like, I'm so happy. I'm training like a mother. And 45 minutes in, you're just like, good. Like it's immediate.
Okay.
You're out of it. There's no crash at all, which is funny because the reason it came to me was I was working with the company trying to help them find the answer to the question that most normal people are asking is what the next DMHA is. And
I don't think that anandamide's it.
Yeah, someone brought it to me as the next DMHA, and I tried it and I was like, this isn't the next DMHA, but it's something.
Yeah.
It's funny because when I told Mike that I wanted to take a pre-workout, he was like, that doesn't make any sense, but it's pretty cool stuff. So, well, you let me know if you think
if you can send me more than one vial, I'm going to do that before yoga, and I'm going to have a time of it.
Oh, that would be
there you go.
And speaking of that, I'd love to get my hands on it to do my own self-experimentation as well.
Yes, I will
try.
I like how you put that.
Yeah.
Like, it's a good way to put it.
Keep it moderate, you know. It's intriguing though, based on the conversation we've had in the past few hours about it.
Yeah.
Just look it up while we were talking, because the Wikipedia page is pretty interesting on it as far as the different stuff that it does.
Yeah, it's in front of me, all 20 tabs of different tabs. So I'll make sure to dig into it later on. But yeah.
I think you could give it the same test that was it Futureceuticals told you to take that product pre-sex?
Which one?
Didn't Futureceuticals tell you, like, listen, take S7 before you have sex?
Yeah.
Oh no, you know who told me that? The old rep.
Rep, yeah.
Yeah. So that was the selling point, man. But
okay.
But honestly, I mean, that's the best sales I've ever heard. I mean, hey dude, just take it before you have sex.
We just need more data, man. I'm just asking you to make some data for me. So
honestly, yeah. I mean, compared to some of the studies I've read, my own personal testimony is a lot more valid. So
you probably have more controls.
Some of these funded studies that I've seen companies make, like out of India, that are like completely, hey, I'll pay you to write this, correlation down. Yeah, we definitely have more control. Honestly, I'll have to send you guys a study that this company tried to use to show me that their product was valid. Amazing. It's too long to get into it, but
I'm interested.
Yeah. No, so pay to play research is the thing. Like
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
One of the things usually with a supplier that will turn me off immediately is having too many anecdotes. If they come at you and they're like, well, it did this to me. I had one guy talking about, an ingredient saying like, it made him not need glasses in like 6 weeks. And I'm like, wait a minute. That's too much. You're going too hard on this, man. You need to reel it back in a little bit, because I'm not going to, you are unselling me from throwing out these really bold claims.
Well, I think that comes a lot from people who don't realize, like, not to sound like you know, we know more, certain people know more, but like people who don't realize who they're talking to. Like, for example, my life extension rep said that, like, talked to me like that today because I happen to be wearing a tank top. And the first, like, every sales point that was made to me was, oh, well, you know, I felt this, and, you know, I noticed this. And for your buff guys, and I started talking to them about, you know, I was like, look, man, you know, we have a myriad of ingredients here. It's not just for lifters. But yeah, I agree with you, Joey. Sorry for the side tangent there.
No, your story is not too different at all. I mean, even when you have store reps coming out or brand reps that you know, I personally, I would be like, come on, life extension. I know you got better than this.
Well,
a little bit better than this.
I'm surprised by that.
Well, it was more so an assumption based off of how I look. So he extrapolated that's how my store runs. You know, clearly I have a sign on the wall that says I don't sell SARMs and pro hormones and stuff, but he didn't see that. He just saw the swole guy behind the counter. So, but yeah.
It's a shame. Gotta break those stereotypes, man.
Huh? Do what?
Break those stereotypes.
Well, yeah.
That's disappointing because Life Extension to me is like one of like the legit companies.
Oh, they're a great company.
You know
I think it was, yeah. Well, there's a difference between having a great company and a great sales rep and a great sales team. You know, so
that's actually one thing that you kind of, it's when we talk about companies, Justin and I will talk about like the core team there, and then Jacob will offer his opinion on the sales rep that he deals with, and it's always kind of disappointing to see some great.
I'm really glad I don't deal with salespeople ever.
Mm-hmm.
They're
terrible.
I just don't even want to hear
representation of the company.
Yeah, I don't even want to hear it.
Honestly, though, it's fun because my guys at the store that, you know, they work with me, and when the sales rep calls, like, there's this like awkward silence while the phone rings, because like the guys look at me like it's like the slow motion dramatic video, as if, oh, Jacob's about to fuck him up, like, because I have no mercy for these guys, especially when they come at me with the whole bro mentality. So
well, because you can figure it out for yourself. That's what I tell them. I'm like, I was like, just show me. I was like, and go away. I said, I'll figure it out for myself, and if I have questions, I'll go ask somebody else. Like somebody smarter than you, I'll just go. Anyway, that's just I'm just glad I don't deal with that.
Chat room's full of the Ron Swansons at Home Depot over here.
That's you have no idea. You have no idea how funny that is, but that's like a total insight. Wow, that is hilarious that you just said that.
Joey, I don't know if this has anything to do with, like, a couple weeks ago we were planning out the content we'll do in Texas, and he was like, we should go to a GNC. I sent him that clip right away. I was like, I feel bad for the kid in GNC that has to deal with us. Like, I don't ever shame these kids. Like, they'll say the stupidest shit to me. I'm like, you know what? You really believe that? That's okay.
I was kind of curious to do that, you know, especially too, like when I brought that up in our group, because there's like, we have so many diverse people within there that do, you know stuff that you, like with Jacob, you're going to make some assumptions. And I was like, I would really be curious to see how certain people are treated going in there. Obviously, you know, that's a sales sort of tactic. That's what you're supposed to do. You're trying to figure out how I can talk. But, you know, I am just really, really curious to see how that would play out. I think we could pull it off.
I think we should when we all, you know, get together, we should set it up in a tiered system. Like, okay, you're going in first, you're going to ask this, and then we're going to send in the backup after this. And then by the end of the day, the poor employee,
I'm sending backup.
Yeah. Well, the poor employee's probably going to quit, but, you know,
the flip side of this whole notion could be that we walk into some store and we go in there and guy walks up, asks us if we need anything, and it's some guy that's like natural body Tim.
Oh,
and, you know, we just don't even see it coming. We'll just be standing there shaking our heads like, God damn, you need to come with us. We'll take you out of here.
Let us save you. Come on, please.
And that happens all the time. Like, once an employee at retail gets like so good, you know, they'll end up ascending the ranks and becoming a rep or doing whatever they'll do, you know, and it's kind of like how we're talking about the products.
I mean, and I've loved to see that with, like, I'll use Blair for an example, like seeing kind of following along with her over the past year and a half. You know, seeing her transition from retail over to working with y'all.
That was a really big deal at GNC for a long time. It was a lot, like, Saigor was really doing a lot of pulling store managers as sales reps. Like, it kind of got to the point where you got in trouble if you took someone.
Yeah.
I mean, we were basically breeding sales reps for companies in a certain sense.
I don't see a problem with that personally.
When you have like a very large scale relationships with someone and they steal all your workforce, I understand, but
yeah. Well, that's your fault.
Didn't Tim work there? Tim worked. Speaking of Tim, he worked at GNC, right?
Yeah, Tim worked at GNC, but he was also a sales rep too for I forget who.
Oh yeah, I do. Oh shit, I can't remember.
This is gonna bother me.
Sounds like you need to get him on as a guest.
He actually, he will.
Yeah.
He will be on for sure.
Yeah. I'll have to have my dictionary with me for that one.
That's gonna be a fun one.
Yeah. I feel like I always have so many like open-ended questions to ask Joey. I don't know.
I know that. So Joey, I remember speaking of Blair, she said something that, and I know like you guys had said, was there things that you specifically wanted to talk about? I know we've been talking about like everything. Was there anything in particular you wanted to? Because I know we're gonna do this again. Hopefully next week. I don't know, maybe next week or something like that.
Down for next week.
I'm game for it.
We do have a product launching tomorrow. If I'm going to do a shameless plug.
Shameless plug time.
Our commune. Yeah. It's going to be for our commune, and it's going to be an immune product that, it's not your typical wheelhouse of immune ingredients. And we'll be filming the Supplement Lab episode tomorrow. It'll probably get launched hopefully Monday, maybe. So you'll be able to tune in, and if you want to watch me, just air myself out for half an hour, talking about these different ways that these different ingredients will modify your immune system. Have they released the supplement packs yet?
Someone was asking about the bacteriophages, so it's public somewhere.
I haven't seen it.
Okay, well, let's see if I can remember. So I've got a zinc copper combo, 10-to-1 ratio. There's a Garicon mushroom that the headlines the highest dose at 500, but with the citrus bioflavonoid complex at also at 500. Lactoferrin at 150 milligrams. This stuff's expensive. There's also phycocyanin, which has also been featured in sedative. And then there's the pro-bacteriophages, and I think that's all of it.
That's the spirulina one, right? The from spirulina, because that was one when I was first putting that product in the app. I had never really delved in that one, and I was researching. I was like, holy shit, this is cool. Yeah,
the people that actually delve in and do their own research, you get the little rewards that I don't necessarily get to talk about.
Yeah, that was
you find out the little hidden.
But so no elderberry.
No elderberry, no echinacea. I did do the zinc, but I did the copper balance, which I'm really kind of shocked that all the zinc products came out. There's no copper, no copper.
How do you feel about Epicor? It's one of those, like, the story behind it reminds me of like your chicken background. So
Epicor is, that's the yeast beta glucan, right?
I think so, yeah.
Oh man, you're gonna ask me about Epicor. All right, so there's two different schools of thoughts, and the Western Hemisphere, whenever they were discovering beta glucans, all the beta glucans that were researched and everything, both in Europe and the United States, were all yeast based. But when it came to the Chinese, they were the one, and Japanese too, they were the ones that were looking at the mushroom beta glucans, and it's really not that different, because in yeast you've got beta 1,6. Which is the main beta glucans there, followed by beta 1,3. In mushrooms, it's reversed, where you have beta 1,3D glucans and then beta 1,6 glucans. And they're more concentrated in yeast, so it doesn't take as much yeast to get the same effect as it does, like say, like you'd have a gram of mushrooms over here, and it might take a couple hundred milligrams of yeast over here to pretty much, get you to the same place. And when it comes in the body's gonna, just go through that, and it's not really gonna discern, does this come from mushroom or yeast, and how am I gonna act differently? It's really those beta glucans are activating the complement system of the innate immune system. So, they're essentially gonna do the same thing. Yeast actually does have a couple other fringe benefits to it, like having selenium and other trace minerals and B vitamins that you don't get so much in mushrooms, whereas mushrooms will have other things like triterpenoids and other different polyphenols that you're not going to get in yeast. I don't really sway one way or the other. I really appreciate them both. Actually, that's complete nonsense. I love mushrooms, and I think that's pretty evident from what we've done so far with the super shroom, and even in this our commune, it's got a mushroom that was incredibly difficult to find, and it's the agarikon mushroom. And if you watch any TED Talks on Paul Stamets about, you know, that man's fascination with overall mycology, agaricon's pretty much one of the top tier mushrooms you can actually get your hands on, and it's really difficult to get your hands on because it's becoming endangered because its habitat is under stress. So, you know, it took a lot to actually get this into a pill.
Right. Well, I have one fun question to end the show because we're running on over the 2 hours. Unless you guys have anything that's actually on topic to talk about.
No. Plus, we got part two. We got part two coming too.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there will be a good answer to this. There's a lot of products that you formulate, and this could be over the years, not just right now, that don't make it to market for various different reasons. I'm sure. What's the coolest product that never made it? I know that you probably might not be able to talk about some, but like something that maybe will never happen, but you felt was pretty cool and unique.
Good Lord, that could be anything on any given day where I'm just mixing stuff up together. Well, and do you like consider like things that are in my daily regimen of stuff? You know, like essentially products that may or may not have. I mean, there's been plenty of things that have been in my daily regimen that ended up making their way into a product and ended up making their way into the market. And you know, for me, you know, in the same kind of way that NNB sent the anandamide over to Ben, like find out what the dose is, kind of thing. You know, I'm test piloting a pretty good amount of stuff of my own. So as far as like things that could not make it to market,
something that you worked on.
What about like?
Happen.
Right, I was gonna say, what about? Did you ever like make a product and for some reason it sort of fell apart at the finish line, and you were kind of like, damn it, like I really wanted to make that happen.
There was one ingredient that I wanted an ARC that, you know, there was some serious supply chain issues, especially with the whole COVID event and everything, and basically a lot of importation across multiple seas that could not happen anymore. That there was that one flaw in this, but I really don't think so. I think that this product is still just as good even without it. And there's one function that thing would have brought to the table, but it's a pretty outlandish function, and we can talk about that a little bit later.
But in terms of like a new SKU or concept that just as a whole had to be scrapped, like not just one pathway, did you have anything? Like
well, let's also consider that I do have a substantial amount of false hope that some of these things that have ended up on the cutting room floor might actually make it to market. So there's quite a lot of categories for that. But you know, I think there's a huge opportunity with C-Tox that we haven't delivered on. That, you know, it's even got a name and we've already, you know, discussed it and talked about it and everything. That, you know, that one was actually kind of backburnered, but I've got that hope that it'll end up making its way to market here pretty soon. And just the whole approach on that to you know, have an attempt at making a comprehensive caffeine detox is something that actually a lot of people kind of need lately. Even myself, where I'm like, you know, when I'm consuming caffeine, I'm like, what am I doing? You know, how many is it going to be worth the suffering? Can I trudge through 7 days of just being, you know, just barely there, and you know, to try to get to the other side and actually not need caffeine as much, or at least, you know, go through that kind of a process where once you do consume caffeine again, it feels just as good as like the first time you ever took it. You know, I think that's what
right?
people want.
You want to get that feel back. That's what the chase is about. I get it.
That's
is there
exactly
a threshold for you? Because I noticed before you said 500 at a certain point of the day is too much. Is there like I've been enjoying smaller doses recently. Is there like a threshold for you where that it moves into the next category for caffeine?
Personally, for me, 200 milligrams has my attention. You have my attention at 200 milligrams. At 300 milligrams, you got my interest. When I've had to like drink 3 energy drinks throughout the day and I'm at 900 milligrams, I definitely know I'm pushing it. But it's a rare occasion that I'll go over that, or just like an accident where I'll be like, oh shit, I took a fat burner and I didn't mean to, on top of all this stuff. So you know, that does happen from time to time, and then you're like, oh my god, I'm at 1200 milligrams for the day, you know, and you're like, I'm gonna like go take some plasma caps or something to try to smooth this thing out a little bit, you know, just so my blood pressure's not too high. So, you know, I don't like to go over a gram. I've almost got a hard stop at that, and the only times that it does happen is where it's an accident for me, because I have diminishing psychological effects, and it just goes into that physiological realm.
Yep.
But other than that, the military's looked at doses well over a gram. And they say that there's no side effects, and I beg to differ. Those guys are active military in the field and stuff, but I guarantee they're feeling something, at that well over a gram dose. That's, you can't do that sustainably. You can't do that for very long. You can't do that for 5 days a week. That's, and for those of you at home that are doing. For those of you that are at home doing a gram of caffeine 5 days a week, you might want to consider slowing that down. It's not healthy.
Yeah, and that's why too. Like, I like using some pretty crazy pre-workouts. That's why that's it. I don't drink energy drinks. That's like a thing. I don't really take fat burners and stuff because I want to enjoy my pre-workout. I want to enjoy that, and then that's it. But if I push it, you're exactly right. It's like. You just realize how much you're taking, and I'm like, this is like literally doing nothing but like beating me into the ground more. What am I to stop it? So then eventually you realize to just stop doing that. But that's why I just try, because if I just take pre-workout, every day can be kind of the same. I can feel good every time I take it, and that's where I want to be. I don't want to mess around with that, and that takes some practice sometimes. And then we always learn from when you go too far. Too much Johanbein or too much whatever, you're like, well, okay, that was too much. We had that one day where we were trying to experiment how much Vaso 6 we could take, and I took like 3 grams, and I was like, okay, can't take any more than that because I thought I was going to die. And I was like, okay, so we found our threshold. Like? It was just like you had like no blood pressure whatsoever. And it was the most uncomfortable, worst. I had to leave the gym, it was just because we're like, just whatever. Let's see how much you can take. So you find your thresholds, and then you're like, okay, now that I know, let's play down here a little bit.
That's an interesting topic in itself, is the near-death experience from supplements.
Part 2, we'll start.
That's going to be its own sub-series right there. That's its own, little mini-series there.
Yep.
Jacob, going into the next episode, we have to have like a previously on the SIRS podcast.
Oh yeah, I'll make it dramatic as hell. Don't worry. I'll make it. Yeah, we'll make it black and white, just some dramatic music. We
got the man for it to do it.
That's right.
Yeah. So just Joey, be prepared for next Thursday to have a near-death story, because we have to start with that.
I think that'll go really well with us taking an Anandaamide and doing the stages and everything. I think that'll be perfect.
Man, I can't wait till next week. I'm so ready.
I just want to reiterate that Justin was the one that nominated himself for the crazy shit. If there's a roulette going on, Justin was the one that wanted it.
Yep. I think there's a lot of people too that until they talk to me like in DM, sometimes they don't realize how fucked up I am. They're like, oh, Justin, nice gets on there. And then they give me in DMs and they're like, oh, dude, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, it's not a big deal.
Hey man, have you watched that supplement industry roundtable? Nah, isn't that the show where they just take party drugs and
No. Hey, so we want to take you inside the industry, and then this is what we talk about.
We're gonna take you inside of yourself.
Right?
Oh.
That's the tagline for next week.
All right.
Get inside yourself.
Prepare to go inside yourself.
Perfect. I like it.
Awesome.
Oh man.
Well, all right.
I want to personally say thank you, Joey. I have to tell you, I'm probably have to take Smirk V2 and put it in a lockbox to wait until next Thursday, because I'm very excited for that. Last time was an experience. So I will ship out the Anandamides to the rest of you for next week.
Okay.
Righteous. Thank you.
I'm intrigued. No, thank you, Joey. I've enjoyed it.
That's fun.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for everything you guys are doing. I mean, in all seriousness, thanks for everything that you guys do, man. We love it.
All right, I really appreciate it, and thank you guys for having me on. I guess twice. That'll be fun too. To be continued.